of Ironman events, all of them qualifiers for Hawaii. For 12 years, the Australian Ironman has been held in the New South Wales coastal town of Forster. This year, the event attracted the biggest ever field, many seeking those 70 treasured berths in the Hawaiian Ironman, and hundreds of others pursuing their own personal Everests. On today's show, we pay homage to the event and the athletes with a very special extended coverage of the Minolta Australian Ironman Triathlon. Let's go to Forster right now with Charles Stewart.
What is it that pushes an athlete to this, that makes the desire to finish no matter what override every instinct in the body, to endure, and then endure some more?
Ironman means a challenge. I mean, in Ironman it takes 8 to 9 hours for the winners. I mean, to physically challenge yourself for 8 to 9 hours is huge.
Last year in Hawaii, even the elite succumbed to the ravages of dehydration. After swimming, biking and running over 226 kilometres, the last 50 metres became the biggest hurdle. It's a delicate balance between racing to the max and running on empty.
I have a dream, and it's to get to that finish line and fall over, knowing that I've pushed myself so hard that there's nothing left in my body and I've given it everything I've had. I don't think I've ever come close to that point in racing.
They prepare all year for this, elite and amateur alike, fitting in lives around demanding training schedules just to be able to call themselves Ironmen and to finish.
The feeling of finishing Ironman is a genuine feeling of relief, that you've made the distance, that you've finished Ironman. I think that finishing Ironman is probably the biggest ask of someone to do at the beginning of the day. It's the biggest challenge, is just to finish the Ironman Triathlon. That's what we all put to ourselves, to get through it.
As dawn breaks over the Australian east coast, competitors in the Minolta Australian Ironman are preparing to face the longest day in sport. A 3.8 kilometre swim, a 180 kilometre cycle and a full marathon run. They range in age from their teens to their 70s and include some of the world's best professionals, the best of Australian talent and a host of amateurs and age groupers. This year's Ironman has attracted a record number of entrants, over 1,100 competitors, and of them, around about 200 come from overseas. Greg Welch, who do you favour in this big field?
Well, last year's winner, Peter REID from Canada, you have to look at him as one of the favourites. He won 2 events last year on the Ironman calendar. Peter Kropko from Hungary, I see him as a bit of a dark horse. He's a very experienced campaigner. Jason Shortis from Australia, Bruce Thomas from Australia, the ever-consistent Bruce Thomas, and Chris Lee from Melbourne. He was 3rd here last year. He's my tip.
Now, what about the ladies? We have a really good women's field here, don't we?
Yes, absolutely. We've got Laurie Bowden. She was 2nd in Hawaii last year. Wendy Ingram and SIAN WELCH. They're my top 3. Look out for JOANNE King from Melbourne, young JOANNE King.
The race is about to begin. There's nothing left but to do the job ahead, to try and finish. Surprisingly, most will. But what will they endure along the way? It's the thought in every mind. Doubt and apprehension, an unwelcome companion for all.
So you want to be an Ironman? Are you ready for the longest day in triathlon? Have you had your alarm clock set at 5 o'clock every morning? Have you done enough training? 20 or 30 hours a week? What about a race plan? Do you have one of those? In Ironman, so many things can go wrong. You can have a great day or the worst day of your life. But to finish one of these, it's the greatest reward imaginable.
It's the same with the start of every Ironman. A confusing mass of flailing arms, bobbing swim caps and kicking legs that turn a calm surface into a boiling whitewater. As a natural order starts to evolve, a small pack breaks away from the rest. However, none of them are expected to play a significant role in the latter stages of the race. The genuine contenders are further back. They know the race cannot be won here. The eyeline swim is merely the prelude to an epic journey, a chance to settle into race mode for the next 8 to 10 hours.
And the swim leg is just 3.8 kilometres of a race that totals 226. Still a long way to go, and we'll rejoin them after the break here on Nine's Wide World of Sports. The hardest part is often the shortest leg, the swim. Let's rejoin the action in Forster to find out why.
There are 1,100 swimmers churning up the brown waters of Forster Keys. And even though there are many, each feels very alone. For the task ahead is immense, and on this day, they'll have to complete it entirely through their own endeavours.
So you've been practicing your swimming? No, not in the pool. Open water. This is the part of the race that people fear most. With 1,200 pairs of flailing arms and legs, you can expect to be swum over the top of. Have your goggles knocked off. You'll get punched and kicked. It gets ugly out there.
Ahead of the melee and leading with the impertinence of youth is a rookie, 22-year-old Paul O'Brien from Sydney's southern suburbs. He may never have raced Ironman before, but he has drawn on the experience of many who have, like his neighbourhood friends Greg and SIAN Welch. With so far to go, hopefully he's learnt his lessons well. The main pack includes California's Wendy Ingram, a former winner in Forster. She is one athlete who has the credentials to not only lead the swim, but win the race. Not far behind her is SIAN Welch, who shared with Ingram that memorable crawling finish in last year's Hawaiian Ironman. At 31, she is still to win an Ironman race.
I really believe that I can win, and I do the training, and there's no reason why I can't win. And I've had some wins in my career now, and that's why I believe, well, I can win now, because I have done it, and I've prepared myself mentally for it, and I think that so much is the mental aspect of it. and I'm there now.
Alongside Ingram is last year's race winner, Peter REID. That victory was the Canadian's first in Ironman and provided him with a new self-belief.
This year, I won last year. This year, there is nothing less than winning. There is no second or third. I have to win. I've done it before. I have to do it again.
REID's main challenger is young Victorian Chris Lee, who so dramatically ended his Hawaiian Ironman 50 metres from the line last year after contesting all day. Just 6 months after that disappointment, he is desperate for a complete race and a good finish.
There's still a question mark there, obviously, but I've done the training just as much as in my past races, so based on that, I don't think I'll have a problem, but once you get in a race, the intensity picks up, so hopefully I won't have any problems, but I guess I won't know until the race, but I'm still pretty positive.
It may be just the prelude, but it can be a baptism of fire. Several kicks have found unexpected resistance, the faces or ribs of other competitors. It's no place for the faint-hearted, and the first withdrawal has copped one such kick in the face, and without his goggles, Germany's Mario Schmidt calls it a day, 225 kilometres short of his goal. Another competitor has received 2 cracked ribs, but he will struggle on. For race leader Paul O'Brien, no such problems. He has clear water. For most of the swim, he's been tagged by 3 others, but with about 500 metres to go, he's surged away to a commanding lead. His pace is close to that of the swim record set 5 years earlier, and 46 minutes after the start, he emerges from the water.
The winner of the first leg here, the I-line swim. Bring it on home, Paul. Come on, get your hands together. Here he comes. Only 6 minutes in there.
His quick swim has earned him a 45-second lead and a $500 bonus, providing he can finish. Just over 220 kilometres till you collect, Paul.
Here we go.
2 minutes behind O'Brien, Wendy Ingram emerges, followed by Canberra athlete Rayleigh Tennant. Last year, Tennant stayed with the leaders early on the bike, despite receiving a dislocated jaw in the swim. In this race, she's had no such problems. First out on the bike is Paul O'Brien, with a 1-minute lead. Not much in a race that'll last nearly another 8 hours for the best and 15 hours for the slowest.
Peter REID, Chris Lee, number 3 here last year, Australia's new hope in the Ironman distance triathlon.
As more emerge from the water, the fastest women are already heading out on the 180-kilometre Trek cycle leg. Tennant, then Ingram. Defending champion Peter REID is also there, along with Chris Lee, just seconds between them.
Number 40 on the way.
4 minutes behind Tennant and Ingram, another first-timer leaves the water. 22-year-old Victorian JOANNE King is just ahead of SIAN WELCH. Welcome to triathlon's longest day, JOANNE. Just 8 or 9 hours to go. The other 22-year-old rookie, race leader Paul O'Brien, went to Hawaii to watch his friend Chris Lee race last year. Since then, he's been preparing for his own Ironman debut, training with SIAN WELCH over the summer on the bike. He plans to ride to his own pace and try to last the distance, knowing his time out in front is limited, but enjoying the experience all the same.
And a mighty impressive start for the young fellow from Cronulla. Let's hope that he can hang on. But for most people, the Great Lakes district of the New South Wales near North Coast is one of the most scenic drives of all. But for hundreds of competitors in the Minolta Australian Ironman, scenery will matter very little during the 180 kilometres of the Trek Cycle Leg. We pick up the action with reality about to dawn for those whose strength lies in the swim rather than on the bike.
In his first Ironman, Paul O'Brien has nearly 1,100 competitors behind him, but two are closing fast. Canadian Peter Reid won his first Ironman here last year, whilst Victorian Chris Lee was third in his debut. They finished the swim 2.5 minutes behind the lead, but now they are erasing the deficit, dispatching the cycling pretenders with ease. Chris Lee impressed everyone with his performance on the bike in last year's Hawaiian Ironman, and his intentions here are clear. His concern not so much to get into the lead, but more to show Reid he means business and dictate the pace.
Peter's a very strong cyclist, that's my strength, so let's say we'll both be pushing it a bit on the bike. I think it should be a strong bike leg, and I guess the pace mightn't be as hard at the start as it was last year. They were really pushing it, but if it has to be, it's going to be.
Peter Reid, renowned as a dogged competitor, knows he can push himself very hard on the bike. He plans to stay with Lee no matter what.
Chris is an exceptional cyclist. I'm a pretty good cyclist, and I think the two of us are going to really push the pace. And it might be more of a survival on the run than actually aiming for a really fast run. I've got paces that I want to hold, but that might all change just trying to keep up with Chris or trying to get away from Chris.
Wendy Ingram came to Forster as race favourite. A winner here in 1996 and runner-up to the great Paula Newby-Fraser last year. But in 1998, things are not looking good. She's cramping and unable to get going properly on the bike.
Someone clocked me good.
There you go, Wendy.
Well, I'm experiencing some extreme cramping at the moment. I'm just trying to breathe it out. Just relaxing. Ow, it's pretty bad. I think I'll be all right. Let's give it a minute. It's still a long day.
Ahead of her, Rayleigh Tennant is going away fast, happy in the lead, unaware that Ingram is in big trouble. The Californian finally succumbs to the inevitable and pulls out after she's passed by the oldest competitor in the field, 75-year-old Bill Bell. In Ironman, so many things can go wrong.
So you survived your little swim, did you? Well, how about 180 kilometres on the bike? You can expect to be in the saddle from anywhere from 4.5 to 8 hours. You had a race plan, remember? Stick to it. Others may be running on pure adrenaline, but you've got to stick to your pace. But don't forget, you've got to keep drinking. You've got to keep eating. No fuel, no finish.
some time, Chris Lee and Peter Reid have been stalking each other in the lead, neither willing to let the other go. Their pace is too much for the rest, and soon their lead is out to 5 minutes. Early race leader Paul O'Brien is now losing places, but coming up through the field is Jason Shortis. A 27-year-old Sydney-sider, now resident of the Gold Coast, he was 29th out of the water and has moved up into 5th, about 6 minutes down on the lead. In the women's race, Rayleigh Tennant has enjoyed leading for about 40 kilometres, but now she has company. SIAN Welch is stalking her, along with the newcomer, JOANNE King. The 22-year-old has never raced this distance before, and to some extent, she's an unknown quantity, even though Welch has trained with her and knows this girl can ride and run, and has had good advice on how she should approach the race.
I'm just sort of looking at doing my own thing, just sticking to my own times, and if I get a good result, that's fantastic.
The cycle leg is SIAN Welch's strength, and the many hours riding with her famous husband are now about to be put to good use. The lead beckoned, and so she took it from Tennant, who never expected to hang on to it anyway. Although Welch was riding to a pre-planned pace, she knows decisive moves had to be made when you have the opportunity.
I would go by strongly, and because you really want to assert yourself at that time, saying, you know, this is my pace, and if you want to stay with me, you've got to come along at this pace. And sometimes somebody mentally will think that's too hard, and they'll drop off, and then you can get back into your internal pace as soon as out of sight, out of mind.
Jo King follows Welch's lead and moves into second. It's time for Tennant to regroup and hang on if she can. Further back down the road, the Canadian fiancée of joint race leader Peter Reid, Laurie Bowden, is riding in 4th place, 5.5 minutes back from the women's lead. A great runner, Bowden has improved on the bike and has a win in Canada and a second in Hawaii as a result. She gives the impression she's biding her time. They have been playing a game of cat and mouse all day. First one surging, then the other. For Reid, Lee may be annoying, but he would have it no other way. Ironman for him is the race, the contest, not the lifestyle or the long hours of training.
The only reason why I actually do the sport is for the race. And the training I find really boring and monotonous, and you know, it seems there's never any break in the days. I'm either swimming, I'm biking, I'm running, I'm doing weight training, I'm getting massage. There's no relaxing time, you know, and I see other friends of mine that are 10K runners on the World Cup circuit, and they're 2 hours a day, an hour and a half in the morning, an hour at night, and they just flop around all day. Meanwhile, I'm in and out of the house doing stuff all day. You know, the training gets to me, but the reward is actually racing.
For Chris Lee, a day racing is much like life. It has its ups and downs. After his dramatic collapse just short of the finish line in Hawaii 6 months before, this day is all about exorcising the demons, having a good race for a change, and finishing.
I'm aiming to be patient throughout the day. I'm sure there's going to be times on the bike when I'm going to be pushing it, testing him out, and he'll be testing me out. So there'll be ups and downs, and hopefully if I do push it, I'll edge away, but if he's still there, then I've got to be patient and maybe hold on to the run.
160 kilometres into the race, and one of those unpredictable things occurs. A bee flies into Lee's helmet and stings him. Allergic to the insect, he keeps riding but removes his helmet to get rid of the pest. It's a no-no. As Reid keeps riding, Lee is stopped by an official for a stop-and-go penalty. The cost is just a few hundred metres, and he's soon back in the hunt, trying to bridge the gap. Just one more thing to deal with on this longest of days.
Welcome back, and earlier in the Minolta Australian Ironman, we watched competitors over the first 6 hours of this epic event. They're nearing the end of the bike leg, but they've still got a full marathon ahead of them. We rejoin the action outside Forster with Charles Stewart.
In Ironman, the bike leg is the longest, 180 kilometres, about 5 hours of the day. For JOANNE Welch, it's also her strength, the part of the race where she can do the most damage to her opponents. And right now, the opponent who's proving the most annoying is Canberra's Rayleigh Tennant, who just keeps hanging in there. But it's not Tennant who's the most worrying, it's the rider in third, the rookie JOANNE King. The 22-year-old is a good rider, but a great runner, and having trained with her in the Australian Alps, this factor must be weighing on the mind of JOANNE Welch. King may be inexperienced, but she's sticking to her plan.
I don't want to try and literally blow myself up. I want to have enough left to be able to sort of push the run. I'll try and sort of keep in touch and try not to let them get too many minutes ahead of me.
JOANNE King emerged from the water with Welch and kept in touch during the early stages of the ride. But now the gap between first and third is growing from 4 minutes to 10. In fourth place, Canada's BOWDEN is closing on King, but still losing time to Welch. The gap between her and the leader has grown from 5 minutes to 8. She's building a valuable buffer between herself and the two runners in the field, King and BOWDEN. But Welch must still be concerned about her ability to keep them at bay during the marathon ahead. He came into this race totally untried and unknown, and for the first 90 minutes of it, he led it. And now in the latter stages of the cycle leg and facing a marathon, 22-year-old Cronulla athlete Paul O'Brien is still managing to run to plan. He has dropped a couple of places, but looks untroubled in 8th. Ahead of him in 7th place, the man who holds the run record on this course, popular Hungarian Peter Kropko. He knows he can pick up 10 minutes on the run, but he's 18 minutes behind the leaders. It has to be too much. Much closer to the fastest end of the race is 27-year-old Jason Shortis, one of the most powerfully built triathletes in the field. 29th after the swim, he's now into 3rd place, 11 minutes down on the lead. A win may be too much to expect, but his best Ironman ever? Perhaps. For the entire race, they've stayed in touch, each not letting the other out of their sight. The 25-year-old Victorian Chris Lee and the defending race champion Peter REID from Canada. Lee finished 3rd here last year in his debut and looked likely to do the same in Hawaii before his finish line collapse. Many feel he'll be Greg Welch's successor in Ironman, but Peter REID has no time for those kind of thoughts. He won here in 1997 as well as in Lanzarote. He knows he can win these races. Chris Lee is yet to experience that joy. For the past 4 hours, 39 minutes, they have been in the saddle, averaging nearly 40 kilometres an hour. Now they have to adjust to the idea of the final discipline, the Reebok run, a full marathon.
Mentally, that's probably the worst time of the race, is you finish the bike ride, you sit down and put your shoes on, and then you've got 42k to go. So that's quite difficult, but I've had some really long runs, happy with my form going into it, so I'm quite excited, just building the run and trying to enjoy the day. I think that's the best way.
The man regarded as the best Ironman of all time, Mark Allen, says these races are not won in the swim or on the bike, or even in the first part of the run. They are one in the mind over the last 10 kilometres of the 42-kilometre run. For these two, that time of reckoning is ahead, maybe another 2 hours or more away. And when you are setting out on such a journey, after already covering more than 180 kilometres, the mind had better be in better shape than the body.
And for Chris LEGH, just 6 months after that dramatic collapse in Hawaii, what must be going through his mind with 40 kilometres to go? We'll find out when we return to the Minolta Australian Ironman after the break.
And the men have begun their marathon, but the lead women are still out on the bike leg, 20 minutes behind. Greg Welch's wife, SIAN, has never won an Ironman, but she's never been so determined nor better prepared. She's right on the pace as we catch up with her on the outskirts of Forster.
She came out of the swim 4 minutes behind Rayleigh Tennant, but with a blistering performance in the bike leg, JOANNE Welch is looking in control of this race, for now. She has set a new women's record on the bike, 4 hours 56 for the 180 kilometres, but unaware of the fact she's more concerned about getting herself set for the marathon ahead, allowing Tennant the minor glory of getting into transition first. There's still much to be done. "11 minutes behind race leaders, JOANNE King is about to begin her strongest leg, the run. The big question in her mind, though, is has she held enough in reserve? The 22-year-old has run marathons before, but never in these circumstances, and never with so many unknowns. In fourth is the other talented runner in the field, Canadian BOWDEN. She had the fastest run split among the women on this course last year, but is looking at a 12-minute deficit on the leaders now. Will it be too much?
So what do we got left? A 42k run, a marathon, piece of cake, 10 to 12 hours of running a week, 80 to 100k. Is that enough? That's the million-dollar question. This race, it's not one in the swim, nor the bike ride. It's now, the moment of truth. The Ironman race is so unpredictable that you may be in the finish chute, but it ain't over until you hit that tape.
In the early stages of the run, Canada's Peter REID had established a break of 100 metres over Chris LEGH. It was the biggest gap between them so far. But 10 kilometres into the run, LEGH slowly and surely starts bridging the gap. REID knows someone is breathing down his neck, and he doesn't like it. It's not just a race, this is a mind game. The Canadian wants LEGH to feel the pressure of pursuit. It's time for him to allow someone else to dictate the pace and just sit in behind. It's going to be a long battle, but for REID, time is immaterial.
I'm really analytical with my racing, so I'm constantly evaluating what's going on around me, within me. So it's a really big process for me, and time goes by. 8 hours is almost nothing on race day.
Behind them, someone else is also making up time. Hungary's Peter Kropko has started the run in 12th place, but he doesn't hold the run record on this course for nothing. He's the hunter, and right now, Australian Grant Giles is the hunted. The next to fall prey is Bruce Thomas, a regular top finisher in Forster. Thomas is not having a good day, and it's made even worse as the Hungarian cruises by. Ahead in third place, Jason Shortis has been having the race of his life. He now desperately wants to back up a strong performance on the bike with the same on the run. But he can feel the presence of Kropko getting nearer. Peter Kropko has reeled in most ahead of him, but he is not getting closer to Peter REID or Chris LEGH, who are now running side by side, stride for stride, in perfect symmetry. Saying nothing to each other, they each silently hope the other will falter, will leave them alone, in the lead. But kilometre after kilometre, they stay together, as if linked by an invisible elastic cord. The women's race has also become a fascinating struggle. JOANNE Welch, who dictated the pace on the bike, is running steadily and has moved away from Rayleigh Tennant. She never expected Tennant to threaten, but she did expect a challenge from young JOANNE King and Laurie BOWDEN. And both are reducing the deficit that was 11 minutes. Now it's only 5 as King moves up into second. Laurie BOWDEN too closes on Tennant. It will not be long before she relegates the Canberra triathlete to 4th.
I will hang on no matter what. I won't let him go. I won't let him go.
Peter REID vowed before the race he would either crash and burn or take victory. And now he is doing what he promised. He's refusing to lie down. The younger LEGH has been pushing him all day, but REID will not falter. Ironman races are always won and lost in the last 10 kilometres, but usually it's long before this. 1 kilometre to go and still no decisive move has been made. Imagine racing another all day over 226 kilometres and having the race decided in a sprint. That's the prospect facing REID and LEGH.
Come on, Chris, push, man. You've got it, Chris, come on. Come on, man.
Now, historically, Ironman events have almost invariably been decided by 5, 10 and sometimes even 20-minute margins. Given the demands of the race and the sheer length of the event, photo finishes are almost unheard of. Yet this year's Minolta Australian Ironman has provided us with a contest that could almost be described as a match race. As we return to Forster, we're about to see probably the closest and most exciting Ironman finish in history.
They say Ironman races are not so much a battle between athletes, but more an individual struggle to overcome personal challenges. Try telling that to Peter REID or Chris LEGH. For them, it's very much a man-on-man contest. They were separated by 7 seconds after the swim, 6 seconds after the cycle leg, and for 30 kilometres they've been running shoulder to shoulder. After 226 kilometres, the Ironman is to be decided in the last 200 metres. Peter REID, a champion once again, almost apologetic in victory. Chris LEGH, devastated in second for the moment, but with his best Ironman so far in a young career.
Peter's shaking a little bit. I have never seen a sprint like this at the finish of an Ironman, Peter. You must have gone all day figuring, when is Chris LEGH going to leave? He never did.
He was so strong today. I kind of feel bad about, taking a sprint like that. It's kind of an old trick I used back in my cycling days. It's kind of a lead out, and Chris was so strong today, and last year he showed in Hawaii how strong a cyclist he was. Now, I've got to worry about another guy in Hawaii again this year, so he's the man to beat.
Well, Peter REID from Canada, an absolutely incredible day. Let's hear it for him. And Chris, I can't stand here and say you came in second place. What you did today was true championship caliber. And you had the home crowd behind you, there's no doubt about it. Did you ever think you were going to get rid of this guy all day long?
I thought I'd sit there and I was hoping to win the sprint. He was just hanging there all day, and I'm just so happy to get through a race. It's been 6 months since Hawaii, and I'm just happy to get through it the way I did. But congratulations to Peter. We raced each other for around about 30k, and it was a great day out there, and I don't feel too bad coming second. It still hurts, but thanks for the support. It was a great day.
18 minutes later, 27-year-old Jason Shortis recorded his best Ironman finish for third, a race time to perfection, absolutely nothing left in the tank at the end. And Peter Kropko, less than a minute behind him, delighted with fourth. Of the top 10 finishers, 8 were Australian, the strongest local representation for years, and noteworthy in 8th, the 22-year-old first-time Ironman, Paul O'Brien. JOANNE Welch has, in Ironman, long been in the shadow of her husband Greg, and for several years wondered if she really had what it takes. In the past 12 months, with Greg's encouragement, she's found a new self-belief. And now in Forster, she's within sight of her first Ironman victory. JOANNE King, the 22-year-old Victorian in her first Ironman, has reduced an 11-minute deficit after the bike leg to just 500 metres. But Welch, running steadily throughout the marathon, was about to experience the rare joy of winning an Ironman. Waiting for her at the line, her husband Greg.
Come on, you can do better than that! Yeah! She did it! JOANNE Welch! There she is, picked up by Greg! Unbelievable! Let's bring her back out!
The party in the Welsh household would be long and hearty this night, and none will celebrate harder than a very happy American Aussie.
And now I'm a real Aussie American. You guys
Go ahead.
I just want to say, Greg, thank you. I love you. And I'm just so happy right now. And I'm so glad I did it here.
Completing an impressive debut just a minute and a half behind Welch, Jo King earned her first Ironman finisher medal. And in third for the second year running, Canada's Laurie Bowden, ahead of Rayleigh Tennant, who faded during the run. Long after the professionals had gone home to rest, the remainder of the Ironman story continued. Hundreds were still out on the course, living an Ironman dream, just seeking completion, validation of their months of dedication and training, symbolised by the Ironman finisher medal. Day turns to night, and still they persist. Ordinary people of all ages and all kinds of backgrounds, drawn to the welcome sight of the finish chute, cheered on by the 30,000-strong crowd that remained right to the very end. The champions returned and joined the celebration of the ordinary folk achieving the extraordinary. How does it feel, Brendan Coburn, to receive that medal? Finishing a race you had to complete with a broken wrist because of a bike crash early in the day. And how about you, Yoshimi Sugawara? The bike leg took you 7 hours 40, and you ran for nearly 6.5 hours so you could be finisher number 1,000. In the 12 previous Australian Ironman races, 3 men have started and finished every time, embodying the real spirit of Ironman. One of them is 51-year-old Dick Quinn, the last official finisher for 1998. But with 2 broken ribs received in the swim, has it ever been this hard before? After 15 hours 20, you can't remember every painful step or every agonising breath. But right now, the overwhelming feeling is relief. Once again, you're an Ironman, Dick Quinn.
And today he's smiling on the Ironman. He gave you the greatest Ironman race in decades. He's brought home your favourite son, Dick Quinn. Let's hear it for him.